Hi, in this video I am going to show you how I decrease for a heel gusset under the heel. It looks like this, and I'm going to show you the whole process step by step from the beginning here and picking up the stitches along the heel flap, the decreases, and how I finish and make this tip here, so that I can continue to make the foot. If you are interested in the pattern for this sock, I will put a link to where you can get it in both the video description and in a link in the top right corner of the video. But now we will just get started. Here I have the sock that I am working on, and I am finished making the heel flap and the heel turn, and I'm ready to begin making the foot. And the round on this sock begins in the middle back. So this is actually the beginning of my round. And this is needle 1, needle 2, needle 3, and needle 4. But when I make the decreases, I will begin my round here, in the beginning of needle 4. The reason is that then the beginning and end of my round will follow the decreases, and I will not get an uneven pattern inside this triangle that I will create here. And to make it easier for me to remember where my round begins when I begin at the beginning of needle 4, I recommend placing a marker here. I have a loose yarn end. I will use that as my marker. So I'll just place my yarn on the right side. That way I can see when I get here that this is the beginning and end of my round. And this is where the round begins and ends in the pattern I am following. If you are following different patterns, then it might be some variations, but I think the principle of making the decreases will be more or less the same. So here I have my yarn. And I will begin by working the pattern on the underside of the heel. And the first round I'm going to show you every step in one sequence, just so that nothing will be left out on how I begin this. So I will just knit my pattern on needle 4 and 1. And now I am getting close to the end of needle 1. There. And now I have the edge of my heel flap, and I will pick up stitches along the edge. And there are many ways of doing this. My favorite is to turn to the wrong side, and I see my stitches here along the edge. These are the stitches that are slipped when beginning a new row on the heel flap, and I will pick up one stitch for each of those stitches, or as many as the pattern requires. In my case that is 18 stitches, and you can see here the stitch on the edge, and it goes through the stitch beside it. I pick up the part of the stitch that has gone through and is going into the knitwork. Or I kind of pick up the first purl bump, and I just move along here and I pick up my 18 stitches. Two, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. And now I'm ready to continue my pattern. And when I get to a place where I have many stitches in the same color, I will pick up the yarn float so that I don't get too much loose yarn on the wrong side to get my toes caught in when I put the sock on. This was a little tight, like this. Watch the tension when doing the first round, especially along the edge of the heel flap, because the stitches picked up rarely has the same tension as your normal stitches. So in my case it's easy to just pull them a little and make it tight in the first round. So just beware of that. And now I have arrived at the end of my heel flap. All the stitches from this side of the heel turn and the edge of this side of the heel flap are on needle 1. And I'm moving on to needle 2. If I just continue to knit, I will usually get a gap here. If you do, it could be okay to find some yarn and pick up just to make this area tighter and to make it easier to close this gap. Now I have picked up one stitch here, so I need to knit that together with the next stitch to not add a stitch. But now you can see I have closed my gap here. And I continue to work my pattern on needle 2 and 3. I pick up the long yarn floats as I go along, whenever that is necessary. A lot of loose yarn ends trying to join me here. And now I'm getting to the end of needle 3. Like this. And here I am in the second transition between the instep part of the sock and the heel flap. And usually I just turn to the wrong side now, and I pick up 18 stitches from this side of the heel flap as well. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. And now I picked them up on my working needle. So now I have a choice. I could either knit the stitches onto this needle and then move them, or I could just slip them over onto needle 4 right away. So that is what I'm going to do, just to free this needle so that I have a working needle. I could have just used this needle to pick up the stitches in the first place, but I just find it more comfortable when it's not too many stitches on that needle already. Okay, I'm ready to continue, and as I did in the other side, I would like to pick up a stitch here to tighten this part and close the gap. I usually begin not just picking up the top stitch here, but I move down one and I twist it, and then I pick up the yarn on top, and I knit. And I place it onto this needle, because then I can knit it together with the first stitch on the heel flap. So now I will continue my pattern to complete my first round. And here this too will be okay when I have worked another round. There, now you can see already it doesn't look too bad. So I just work my way towards the end of my round. And there I am at the beginning of my round. And where was my marker? Because later it can be good to have a reminder of where the round begins. Now I am ready to begin my second round. And now I will begin my decreases, and I will decrease from each side of my heel turn. And I begin on the right side by slipping the first 2 stitches, and I go from the right and I slip 1 and slip 2. And the 2 slipped stitches, now I stick my left needle through both stitches. I pick up my darker yarn, because that is the one I use for my border around my gusset, and I knit the 2 stitches together. And now the darker yarn has placed itself on top of the other yarn, and my decrease also angles from right and towards the left. And now I continue to knit my pattern across needle 4 and 1. And when I have 2 stitches left before, or 2 stitches left on my heel turn piece here, I stick my needle through both stitches beginning from the left, and I knit the 2 stitches together. And now you can see here as well, the darker yarn has placed itself on top of the other yarn, and the decrease angles from left and towards the right. And now I am going to continue to decrease in every second round, and when I have just a few stitches left, I will get back to you and show you how I finish this heel gusset. And now my heel gusset is almost finished. I have done my decreases on the right and on the left, and I have now the 2 darker border stitches left and 1 in the middle. And when I finish, I do that in 2 rounds. And what I do first is to slip the first green stitch here, and I slip the second the same way as I have done in my right side decreases here, and I knit those 2 stitches together, and when I have done so, I will take this stitch and place it onto my right needle where I have the second green stitch. I pick it up and I slip it over and off the needle. The green stitch I have left, I put it back on my right needle, and now you can see I have the tip of this triangular shape here. And now I will work 1 more round, and when I arrive here again, I'm going to show you how to get rid of this stitch so that I can continue the rest of the foot. And now I have finished this round, and I have stopped 1 stitch before this dark green stitch that makes the tip of my heel gusset. And what I do now to decrease this stitch is that I do the same thing again. I slip, slip, knit, only I begin with this stitch. So I slip, and then I slip the dark green one, and I knit those 2 together, but now I use the lighter yarn. Use the yarn in the same color of the first slipped stitch, and now you can see that the lighter stitch places itself on top of the darker. And when I continue, for now you can see a little bit of the darker green color here, but when I have worked a couple more rounds, this will close together and I will have a nicely formed tip under the foot, and it looks like this. And at this point, the only stitches left on my round is for the sole and the top of the foot, and I can continue to work my foot pattern until I'm ready to begin the toe. So that's it for my heel gusset decreases. Thank you so much for watching.